Finally, there was some respite, assurance that it was okay, that Tess was okay. Far from the activities where the crowds had thinned and the decorations were sparse, Tess sat against the wall. There was one drinking fountain on the wall, and she sat directly under it. Curled into a ball with her knees drawn into her chest, she rocked back and forth, the bandana shadowing her face. Joe breathed a sigh of relief. On the off chance there was someone up there looking out for her, he looked up and tipped his bandana. He strolled up to Tess and shot her a smile.
How's it going, kiddo?
No response.
I think you forgot these.
He leaned her grovel against the wall. His adrenaline told him to just drop the shoes, but he made sure to place them gently at her feet. Her shoulders huffed twice. She looked up at him. 2 tears slipped out of the corner of her eyes. Otherwise, there were no sore eyes or a puffy face. Joe dropped to her knee.
Hey, is everything okay?
She shook her head, once left, once right.
I don't know if I'm happy or not.
His mouth hung open as he tried to formulate a response. Although the truth was as obvious as the 2 tears sliding down her cheeks. No happy person would ask that question.
Do you feel unhappy?
She nodded.
I think so.
Joe frowned and looked away. The guilt made it too hard to look at her. Tess wiped away her tears and sniffed up everything else.
Are you afraid to cry?
Not really. I just don't feel like doing it now.
So you feel better?
No. Just don't feel like crying now.
Ah.
Other kids cry a lot. They scream too. I don't know how they do it so much. It seems hard.
She brought her knees further into her chest.
And scary.
Emotions are pretty scary.
Yes. I want them to go away.
You feel them a lot, huh?
Yes and no. Sometimes I feel a little. Sometimes I feel a lot. It feels like...
Tess ruffled her bandana and tried to think of words. Words were hard. Finding words for herself was harder.
It feels like... people want me to feel a lot when I feel a little. Or want me to feel a little when I feel a lot.
Did you feel a lot back there?
Joe motioned down the hall where the bouncy castle was, where all the hectic things were.
Too much. Like, I shouldn't be there. And they made me not want to be there. It's always like this when I try to play.
Joe tilted his head.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know.
Joe's shoulders slumped. The kid really had a way of taking the calcium out of your milk.
A lot when a little, huh?
Yeah. But it's okay, Joey. It's just how it is.
It isn't, though.
He clenched the fabric of his jumpsuit, cursing the person who made an 11-year-old think the world worked this way, then cursed himself for his role in it.
You're wrong. It is. Sis yells at me because I feel a little. You run after me because I feel a lot. It's okay. It's what I do. And it's what grown-ups do.
A single dimple formed on Tess's cheek.
Except Marina. I like her. She's nice and talks to me about fun things. Sis says it's because she's special. I think she's right. Marina is very special.
Joe decided he'd swap Mariah over the head later for that one.
I think I scared her away. Too freaky. Because I'm me.
That one was the hardest for Tess to say. She wished she hadn't, because the second she said it, it felt true.
I just
Her bottom lip quivered.
I just wish I wasn't me. And that not me was like everyone else. And I wish I was okay.
The heartbreak that had been collapsing in on Joe fell down then and there. No one looked at Tess like a person, let alone a child. Not even Tess. Not even him. She was just an enigma, an icy set piece that existed to make everything else feel whole, but not herself. He had enabled that, the narrative that small people only felt simple things. It had all come full circle. Joe clutched the plastic dog tag strung around his neck. Either through inspiration or determination, a small fire sparked inside of him. She had tried to explain herself to him as well as she could, so it was only fair to do the same. Alrighty, let's give this a shot.
You know, I used to not be okay.
Tessa's eyes grew wide in disbelief, then small in suspicion.
This is a ploy.
No, honest. I was pretty messed up as a kid.
That doesn't sound right. You're too normal.
Pretty confident for someone who wasn't even alive to see it.
Before I was born?
The allure of the before times was too great to ignore. It seemed mystical to her, the era of ancients.
I was a lot different back then. Everything was different, I guess.
Did she dare ask?
Different how?
She dared.
Well, I had a brother, for one.
Exclamation points went off in Tessa's head. She had at least a dozen questions to ask. But before she could bring up any of them, the truth made itself known to her. The exclamation points became ellipses.
Oh, sorry.
It was a long time ago.
She stayed silent.
You aren't going to ask?
Wouldn't it be rude?
Joe shrugged.
His name was Benjamin, but I just called him Benji. Yeesh, my mom would always throw a fit when she heard me call him that. Benjamin is a perfectly lovely name, and all that jazz.
It's biblical.
Most things are, kid.
Tess recalled the handful of times she had been dragged to Sunday school. Her blood ran cold with Old Testament feel. Her voice went quiet.
Was it a plague?
No, nothing like that. He drowned.
Tess shifted around to find a comfortable position, but remained thoroughly uncomfortable. It wasn't scary, just sad. And Joey sounded sad when he said it.
I was younger than you when it all went down, and he was even younger than that, so he...
Using track, Joe scratched his head. Half of him felt like he had traveled back in time to that sweltering day, where stepping outside felt like stepping out of the shower. The other half of him felt like it didn't exist.
Yeah, couldn't swim. I told him I would teach him how, but there was an auto show at the pharmacy. The Pop's shop was sponsoring. You've met my Pops, right?
Very big. Very scary.
Nah, he just doesn't talk much. Kinda like you. I wish he did, though.
Why are you trying to delay this, he thought. Saying it changes nothing.
Anyway, I said that he should go to the river and that I'd catch up. They found him a few days later.
But saying it out loud changed everything. Tess thought about how many times she had swam in that river, and how she might never want to again. She thought about how Joey looked like a new Joey. Tess reached over to touch his egg, not knowing anything else to do except placing her hand on it.
Are you okay now?
Oh, usually. It comes and goes. Comes when I worry about folks, goes when I know they're okay. But back then, well, I guess no one would be okay after that. And I wasn't.
Did you feel a lot?
He stared down at her and grinned, but Tess knew it was just for pretend.
Too much. Too sad, too guilty, too angry. Mom was hysterical through all of it, and I can't really blame her. Pops never talked about it, threw out most of Benji's things within a week. Can't really blame him either.
A lot and a little.
Yep, and I must be their kid, because I got both of those things.
Joe toyed with the dog tag, twirling his fingers through the chain. It weighed more than the plastic it was supporting.
Some days I skipped school and would just sunbathe on the riverbank. Looking back, that was probably weird, but being so close to where it had happened made it feel like it hadn't. But then, when I would go out, everything was just a reminder. People would look at me and I'd get heated. They'd whisper and I'd lash out. I thought maybe they were talking about how it was my fault, or maybe they just felt bad. Didn't matter. Both scenarios really ticked me off.
You sound paranoid, like Sis.
Probably was. It was pretty lonely. Picking fights with people doesn't make you a lot of friends, Mariah being the exception.
Tess considered this, imagining Joey sitting as he is now, except now, in the middle of a wheat field, planes soared far above him in the distance.
I hope you're not lonely anymore.
Of course not. I got you, don't I?
And Sis.
Especially your sister. And remind me to wash my mouth out with soap later for saying that. She was as mouthy back then as she is now, and I didn't exactly practice the art of pacifism. So us getting to know each other may or may not have involved a fist fight on the playground.
Sounds about right.
Couldn't have happened any other way. But as crazy as it sounds, she was the only one who would let my emotions play out.
Did not compute. Tess wrinkled her nose, unable to imagine any scenario where her sister would show as weak of a display as empathy.
That's impossible. She would never do that. Also, she would probably call you a crybaby.
Don't get me wrong, she absolutely did. But she would always stick around. Didn't matter how many times I told her to go away. It was always, shape up, slacker! That lemonade stand ain't gonna build itself!
Oh, that sounds more like her. Does that count?
Not sure. I like to think she was trying to help in her own way. It might be the only way, and I'm better off for it.
The conversation petered into fumes. They both stared ahead, watching the splattering of people occasionally walk by. A lot had been said, even more had been thought. Much of what Joey had told her was sad. For some reason, she felt warm. The conversation had felt like a hug. She had been right. He was a new Joey. Perhaps this one was better. He looked at Tess straight in the eye, as much as he could under the water fountain. Joe had no illusions that he understood everything, or that any of the things he had said would make her feel better. But doing this was at least something.
Things are different for each of us, Tess. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. It's not always going to be okay. You won't always be okay. And there are going to be times you might not even know why.
A hollow space drilled itself into Tess's chest. It dug its way down to her gut.
But I'll be here, even if you never feel okay ever again.
However, the thing about hollow spaces is that there's always room for them to be filled.
That said, not feeling okay sucks though. so let's try to boost your chances.
He pulled the dog tag over his head. At first, Tess wasn't sure what to do. She watched the tag sway from the chain as he held it out. Cautiously, she opened up her palm and reached out. He dropped it in her hand, the beads of the chain rattling behind it. Tess squinted and read the faded name carved into it.
What? This is...
A good luck charm. Might not seem like a real dog tag, but the engraver who gave it to my brother said it works twice as well.
The lump formed in Tess's chest. It snaked its way up to her throat. She could feel it clenching.
I'm not a very lucky guy though, so try to give it back once you don't need anymore, okay?
She couldn't see now. Everything looked like a blur of watercolors. She clutched the charm in her fist and brought it to her chest.
Joey... I think I feel like crying now.
She choked out the first two sobs before Joe pulled her in. Tess clenched his jumpsuit and cried into it. No one seemed to pay them any mind.